to our first steering committee meeting of 2026. Appreciate everybody joining us today. We are going to start with a little bit of an update. We also have some requests for folks that'll come through an email that I'll be sending out in the next couple days. And then we're going to do an update on the Regional Resilience Code, have a little bit of a discussion around the roadmap and the implementation guide, and associated with all of them, we have an ask. And we'll get to that when we get to those specific items. So project status update. First, I want to, for those of you who may not have been able to make the November meeting, which was the last meeting in 2025, we wrapped up the first phase of the project at the end of September last year. And so there are a number of kind of key deliverables that have been produced and delivered to Department of Energy. These are available for everyone. We're in the process of getting most of these up on the project website. We're also, Julie and I are working on getting like all of like the meeting materials and things from previous meetings and other documents as well up on the project website through the member portal. So that'll all be available to you in one place. But we really kind of wrapped up that first phase of kind of, starting with the baseline survey and better understanding the needs of building departments and their issues and challenges around energy code adoption and implementation, pulling some of existing data around the building stock in Arizona and New Mexico, along with the baseline survey results to create this baseline assessment. As you may recall, SDR developed a community engagement plan, and there were a number of engagement sessions, some aimed at the public. There was one focused on building officials. Specifically, there's recordings of those available, as well as a summary report. You don't want to listen to the entire recording. And then we really developed what is fundamentally the scope for the Regional Resilience Code. That's the RRC framework. And so there's a couple pieces to it. One of them is the full set of code concepts. That's the initial tag and focus group code concepts. Within that, there was a little bit of a prioritization, and it wasn't prioritization in the sense of like, these are the most immediate things we need to address, but some of it was like, here's some of the low-hanging fruit, some of the things that we think can be addressed more quickly. And so trying to look at pulling the code together in these buckets. The second one, the code concepts with the August date, really focuses in on the initial list of code concepts. And then we did a kind of a scope / outline for the roadmap. As I mentioned in November, we're rethinking that a bit. I don't think any of us were 100% satisfied with where we landed. There's been a lot of discussion about what it needs to entail. So we're having a lot of conversations about, kind of what ultimately that needs to look like. And then there's the Resilience Code Scoping Report, which I recommend if you are having trouble sleeping. It is over 100 pages, and it documents the entire advisory committee input process. So it documents all the meetings that were had with the TAG and the EAP and the code development writing advisory group, and kind of really shows how we got from our initial discussions to the final set of code concepts. And then the final piece is the framework for the living implementation guide. So all of those are available. I'll make sure I'll resend out. I sent the link out to everyone in November for the Google folder, but I'll resend it again with the follow-up to this meeting. So in terms of moving forward, so you'll hear updates and on the kind of the core pieces, the Regional Resilience Code, the roadmap, and the living implementation guide. But as of right now, we technically should be in phase two, but we cannot officially start phase two until Department of Energy approves what's called a continuation application. And right now, staff at the Department of Energy who run the Recce program are not permitted to process continuation applications. So we are moving this forward, but we do not have access to the grant at this point. So it's going to move a little slower than maybe we would like, but it is moving along. And we want to make sure we keep you updated and keep you involved. But another kind of shift that we're going to see is that I think early on there were several attempts to do outreach to you all to get a better understanding of your best practices in your jurisdictions, best practices you might be aware of in other jurisdictions, and a better sense of kind of like what emerging themes and trends exist. And so we're going to be, and it was kind of a little hit or miss. So moving into this next phase, we are going to more formally be engaging with you all because it's really important, and we've said this multiple times, we're not trying to reinvent the wheel here, and every jurisdiction that's part of the collaborative, and many that are not, are already doing cutting edge work. You're already leaders in certain areas, and so we want to leverage that in the development of the code and the roadmap and the living implementation guide. So that really is going to tie to those asks that we're going to make. Hopefully not too big of a lift. We'll try to not put too much effort on you, but hopefully that'll balance out with the every other month steering committee meetings. So like I said, we're moving forward. It'll be a little slower, but but we'll get there. And everybody on the core team is looking for outside funding to help kind of support getting the work done, in particular the code. So real quick requests. I'm going to be sending out emails, like I said, fairly soon. I want to update the roster. So I'll be sending you what your current roster is for your jurisdiction, and then, or your organization. So everyone will get this, and, make any changes. Lots of involvement is a good thing. So don't feel like you have to limit the number of staff that you have, especially if you can't always make the steering committee meetings. Having backups or having alternative staff or staff with different knowledge sets is really valuable. If your jurisdiction committed to in-kind match, we're still tracking that. So that request will be part of that email, as well as with the template. With many of you, I've been doing one-on-ones, and we'd like to continue that, particularly with the less frequent steering committee meetings. So with a number of you, we've already like readjusted, like maybe change the date and time, or change the people that are attending. So that will also be part of that request is do you want to adjust the timing or the cadence or the attendance, the attendees at your one-on-one, if you have one, and if you don't, would you like one? And the cadence.
Leslie, your microphone cut.
Yeah.
Apologies, folks. I have this problem. I only have it with Teams. I don't know what's happening until somebody tells me my microphone cuts out. And but it's at least an easy fix. Hopefully it won't keep happening. And then the final kind of piece to this quote unquote request, I put together a presentation that walks through all of those major, well, not all of them, but it walks through kind of the core of what we're thinking about for the regional resilience code. It starts with the baseline assessment, just high level, how we're putting the regional resilience code together. Our high level thinking about the roadmap and high level thinking about the living implementation guide. I've done that already for staff here at the City of Tucson, others in our Planning and Development Services Department that haven't been involved, as well as folks from our Water Department, our Resilience Office, our Energy Office. And it, I think, went pretty well. I've also done a similar presentation for the Pacific Coast Collaborative, which is the states and major jurisdictions in California, Oregon, Washington, and British Columbia to talk about what we've done. I'll be next month doing something similar with the Western Adaptation Alliance. I am more than happy to do the same presentation for your staff or stakeholders, or both. A number of you all, the jurisdictions have indicated an interest in doing that. But I'll include that in the email as well, along with the PowerPoint, so you can decide whether that's something you want to do. But please look for the emails in the next few days. And we do need, if you are doing the in-kind, to have that by the end of the month. Normally, we ask you to have it by now, but with the holidays and with DOE kind of being a little silent, we've kind of delayed that a little bit. All right. Oops. All right. Since NBI is not able to be here, Greg, who's been working with them very closely on the Regional Resilience Code, is going to provide the update on where that's at.
Great. Well, Tristan and Kevin have really been carrying a lot of weight on this, but everybody's kind of been working within the time limits and adjustments that we've been able to with just everything going on with the grant. But they've been able to continue it for the last, I think it's about 4 months now, putting together different pieces of the actual appendix code. And what's been great is it's really coming together to be a full appendix here, where it has all the elements of definitions, the layout, and then actual code language in there. So this is the phase where we're actually writing the code language. Oh, great. Leslie has it up on there too. Perfect.
Yeah. We're not going to go through it in detail,
yes.
But I just wanted folks to see you're not kidding about it's like actually coming together as a code.
Yeah. So. And what's really neat to see is so many of the long discussions that we've had for the last year or 2 years, they're all really playing out in this. So we've really been able to tie it all back into the hazard categories with FEMA. And this gives us a great foundation for how we actually set up the code and have a foundation for it. So that was a big discussion, and it's actually, I think, working in the code of different areas, being able to identify within the FEMA map what their hazards are. And then they've worked into the code now. What we've added is each of the energy or efficient measures that we've added in there have been assigned to those hazard categories. So a municipality could look in there, see what hazard categories are highest in their county, and then be able to pick out and see exactly which measures are best fit for them. So it's a neat milestone because we are meeting not only developing the code, but really that goal of how do we take measures that everybody has talked about and customize them for the Southwest and really give them a tool that they can use. So it's we're getting to the end of it. There's definitely some expertise that are being chased down to pull in the last pieces of details in there. But it really gives us a structure to start working with, to be passing around, to be able to get more expert opinions on, which I think is probably what we're going to see as this kind of wraps up, is that next phase of fine tuning it, looking at it, seeing how jurisdictions feel about it, feeling how players feel about it, how experts think it works or doesn't work. But it's actually the code, which is kind of cool to see because I know we've talked a lot, and to actually see something coming together is pretty exciting. Um, so we're not going to go through any of the details of exactly what's in there right now, but all I can say is all the in-depth discussions that we've had have really helped influence this. So it's really neat to see everybody's hard work actually come together and see all those notes come in and really fine tune this. So um, that's kind of the update that we have on it right now. I don't know, Leslie, if we want to open up for questions right now. We're not going to go through the document necessarily,
Yeah.
but does anybody have any questions just about the process or where we're at? Okay,
So you've
that's
got a
good.
pretty quiet tooth today.
Yeah,
And
but
and
hopefully we get to share that with people soon once it's complete, and people can actually see that. But I think it's a really great document to start working with.
yeah, yeah. And to go back to something Greg said, we are looking for local experts in like the major categories of what's going into the code, both to help with drafting pieces that haven't been done yet, as well as just helping vet what has been and maybe providing some different perspective. You know, maybe there's some things that are being done locally that need to be integrated into this. And so one of the things that I'm going to be sending around is a request for anyone in your jurisdiction that you think could be an expert in, you know, one of these specific areas. And so we're going to focus on each of the kind of the overall kind of higher level code concepts. And then it will identify, so cool hardscape is one of the areas that we're focusing on, but within that, there's multiple like components to it. And so we'll list that all out. And for example, like our urban landscape manager here in Tucson, we're connecting with MBI because she's got a lot she can provide. There's certainly others in our water department, some of our reviewers. Um, so I'll send this out, and please, if you have staff in your department or know of staff in your organization that could kind of help. And this is not going to be like we're pulling together a technical advisory group. These are really more one-on-one conversations about these particular areas. There might be an attempt occasionally to pull a couple people together at the same time. But we really want to make sure that we're getting good expert input, and rather than just the technical advisory group, since we're getting into drafting the language, it's really important to have it actually be the jurisdictional people that understand how this is going to be adopted and implemented. So, yeah, Herbert, you got a question?
I do, thank you. And I had to step away, and I'm not sure if you maybe discussed this, or if I'm sorry if this is not the right time to bring this up. But one thing that we have worked seems to be a challenge here. I work at Santa Fe County in the growth management department. We issue what we call development permits. We don't do the building permits in the state. The construction industries division does that. And the times I've asked here about the possibility of some kind of high performance building ordinance, or adopting something like this over and above, or in addition to building codes, the response has always been, well, we don't regulate that. We just do development permits for like the horizontal development, subdivisions and conditional uses, but we send them to the construction industries division, so they don't enforce that. So we really have no way of implementing any kind of ordinance like this. Seems like the only option is, well, we just bring in the building permit within the department and hire certified building officials and inspectors and so on. And just wondering, I don't have to really address it now, and I apologize for perhaps getting off topic here, but I would love to have a conversations with some folks on this committee who have had that experience, and if that's you or you have some ideas, I would welcome some feedback, or please share your name and number in the chat. And sorry for interrupting the presentation, but that's just something that I can't help to think about. With as much as I love this, I just don't want to promote it and say, well, we can't do it. And I'm not sure how to work that through. But thanks for letting me jump in.
No, certainly, Herbert. And I know, you're in a completely different situation in New Mexico because it is done at the state level, which has its pros and cons, as opposed to like Arizona's the home rule, which is, I think, a nice element of the pairing of these two states is you've got both of those different angles. So maybe, Herbert, we can connect and maybe get your request into something I can send out in an email. And that might help kind of get some input back to you. But I'd rather it be in your words rather than me try to synthesize it.
Yeah,
but
thank you.
But certainly anybody on the call, if you've got some thoughts and are willing to chat with Herbert, feel free to reach out, or put your info in the chat. It's certainly a very valid request and understandable need. So, all right. So yeah, so this will go out fairly shortly. I've got to put the full table together so it's easy for you guys to populate, which will take me a little bit, but I'm hoping to get this request out next week to you. All right, so update on the roadmap. And Herbert, actually, you jumping in where you did, it was a little bit of a nice segue here, because the roadmap is really intended to be things that are longer term than the cycle of a building code. It's meant to be things that are outside the scope of a building code. It's meant to incorporate best practices that are already in place in the region, in various localities, as well as try to understand emerging trends and how those can impact how we think about getting to net zero energy and water. So there might be opportunities here to advance policy in Santa Fe that's outside of the actual building code itself. So this is one of the core pieces where we want to come back to you guys and understand kind of what you have done that's already best practices, and what you're talking about related to these kind of hazard categories, related to buildings in general, that maybe your bigger picture, maybe you're not, it's not like we're working on this ordinance, but we're really like focused on how do we deal with this big thing that we think is going to happen. So I'm still trying to figure out the format of how I want to get this input from you all, but we're going to be reaching out in a more structured way to get a sense of what you have that really ties in with what we're trying to address here through the code and the roadmap. And so I just did this as an example of kind of where I'm thinking right now is, we have all these risk categories, and there are things that are being done, and maybe it's not an obvious connection. I mean, with extreme heat, Phoenix's heat response plan, that's an obvious one. Water scarcity, some examples. Tucson just passed a large water users ordinance end of last year. Well, some of you heard me mention earlier, we're working on a low impact development guidelines, more stringent guidelines. We've passed a prohibition of ornamental turf. Those all kind of tie in there. Our grid and energy, Phoenix and Mesa have put in place regulations around data centers. And this is where we want the things that you guys are doing and thinking, but if you know of someone else that is like, oh, this jurisdiction has also done this great thing. So for example, data center regulations, in addition to Phoenix and Mesa, Chandler and Town of Marana also have regulations in place as well. So we're not just pulling from just the jurisdictions in the collaborative, but really interested in understanding other things that are happening within the region. But Flagstaff just in December released an energy efficiency and electrification study that is really neat. And they have it posted on their website, so we can share that. Tempe's done some energy equity work. And then on the emerging ideas side, this one might be a little bit more challenging because you might not know all of those discussions that are happening. But if you hear about things that are like, we're not sure what this is going to look like, but we're trying to figure out what we might do. So for example, in Tucson, we're working with the University of Arizona to and with Pima County to kind of see what would a net zero water program look like, and so really the university is taking the lead on it. We're just kind of seeing where they go. But what they're proposing could be, an interesting element to include in the roadmap, because it could spur thinking in other jurisdictions about how they might want to tackle this and whether they want to even tackle it at all. Another example is we're hearing a lot more talk about virtual power plants. The utilities in Arizona are really pushing this thinking. We're seeing more and more conversations at jurisdictions. We're starting to kind of figure out what this is and what it means. But basically it's, treating the built environment as an extension of the grid through distributed energy resources in a much more micro scale and comprehensive way than, we may have thought about that in the past. It's not just, solar and battery storage, but there's a lot more to it. And I think there's an opportunity for, the utility thinking to kind of dovetail with where we're going. So this is going to be part of us trying to really, really scope out the vision for this roadmap. And we're hoping to use it as a way to kind of share best practices, like I said, throughout the region, because, maybe a lot of you didn't know the Tucson now has a large water users ordinance, and then there's things I'm sure that your jurisdictions are doing that we're all not aware of. But also just kind of setting that context of things are changing and how as jurisdictions do we think about what that impact is going to be on our communities, like if utilities really do move in this direction of trying to get virtual power plants developed at large scale. So again, I'm not going to make the ask here. We'll get an email out to everyone, but I did want to open it up for a few minutes and see if people had questions, or if people just wanted to say, hey, or were you aware that, we're doing X? Boy, we have a quiet group today.
I'll add something. I know that Santa Fe County is looking at code amendments for stormwater drainage. Our code is very empty in that regard, and of course green stormwater, and looking at different design standards for runoff and roadway drainage and parking lots and all sorts of things. So one thing that we are doing.
All right. I'm making a note of that, and I'll be interested in talking to you more, Herbert, about it and seeing where you're at, and also happy to share kind of some of the things that we're thinking about here in Tucson as well. So anyone else want to share? Nothing. All right. Well, moving on. Julia, you want me to run through this, or do you want to start with it, or do you want me to start and you finish?
Whatever I can start and then you can finish if you want. basically, just a high level update of where we're at with the Living Implementation Guide is, if you guys will recall, there's 4 different sort of types of resources that we have categorized the Living Implementation Guide resources into. The first was resources designed to support the collaboration. The second was marketing and community engagement. The third was education and training. And the fourth was technical support and compliance. And while it's true that a lot of the resources in terms of the original proposal really do depend on what the actual regional resilience code ends up looking like, in conversations that I've had with Leslie and Kevin and a few other people, we've talked more about how one of the goals for the project also was just general IECC adoption. And so we're starting to think more broadly about the types of resources that could be developed and how they could help facilitate that process as well as support the adoption of the Regional Resilience Code once that's up and ready. So right now we're really focused on the first 2 boxes that I was talking about initially, the collaboration resources and the marketing and community engagement component. So for the first one, Leslie mentioned at the beginning, and I'll just reiterate, we are in the process of finalizing, organizing all the different materials that have come out of the process to date, the recordings of the meetings, the summaries, that sort of thing, all of the key deliverables, and we are going to get those up onto the member portal of the website. Hopefully in the next couple of weeks. We're sort of working with the website developer at the current time to try to figure out what that transition is going to look like, but hopefully in the coming weeks that will go live. And then in terms of the second sort of pot or bucket of resources, the marketing and community engagement, that's what we really want to focus on now. And that's where the ask that I think Leslie's going to talk about is going to come from. But the goal here again is to think about what types of resources, for those of you who have already adopted the 2024 IECC, are there any resources that you really wish that you had during that process, or that you developed in order to help facilitate that process, that you'd be willing to potentially share with the group? For those of you who are in the process of it right now, of adoption, is there anything that you think would be particularly helpful? And then for those of you who are still just thinking about adoption, is there anything, for this stage of the process for you that would be useful? And so I'm going to sort of, I guess, pass it back to Leslie, because I think that the ask from me is going to be similar to the ask from her. And I think in order to minimize the impact on everybody's time, we're probably going to do this sort of a joint conversation between the 2 of us and each municipal partner, hopefully.
Yeah. And just to reiterate, it's like, since the code is under development and it's unfortunately moving a little slower than what we had hoped, the idea here is we don't want to wait to develop resources for the Living Implementation Guide until it's done. So how do we prioritize our efforts in the short term? And also really thinking about how do we provide a short-term benefit as well. And so, for example, the City of Flagstaff, their sustainability group went to Mayor and Council last week and got direction from their Mayor and Council on what they're going to do around the adoption of the IECC. Excitingly, it's actually pretty bold direction, and so they're going to go above base code on, at least that's the direction, is to go above the base code in the 2024 adoption. And so, Julie and I started thinking it's like they're at the point where they're thinking about, all right, what does our community engagement look like? And if there are specific resources, generalized resources that would help them, then those resources should also be of value to other jurisdictions. And so even though it's IECC, a big goal of this project was not just getting everyone to implement the Regional Resilience Code, that would be great, but even if we can get jurisdictions to adopt more advanced energy codes, that is still a great outcome here. And so that's why we're kind of focusing on the IECC and trying to take advantage of the processes that have been going over the last year and are going to continue to go over the next couple of years. So we really want to try to leverage the work that's happening and use it as a basis to start developing resources that are meaningful in the Living Implementation Guide. The third one, support for the roadmap adoption, is a little farther off, and it's because it's a little unclear because it's going to be tied to what the eventual scope of the roadmap is. And so that's another reason for Julie and I to kind of tag team with you all on these. And as you said, probably the approach we're going to take is reach out and explain the specific ask and set up one-on-ones with each jurisdiction to kind of talk through some of the roadmap needs and the implementation guide needs. That's kind of our thinking at this point. But certainly, if you have anything that you have developed and you want to share that, I want to give a real shout out to Tempe, who's already said, hey, we've got some resources related to the IGCC, and that might be helpful to connect with the Living Implementation Guide. So if your jurisdiction does have those things and are interested in this, please feel free to reach out in advance of us setting up those one-on-one calls. All right, so again, any questions here? All right, this is we're gonna get done. This is a slide I showed in the November steering committee meeting. It's just a repeat, and a lot of it we've already said already, but I really just want to underscore that, despite the fact that we cannot access the grant currently, we're still hopeful. The grant has not been terminated. MBI did hear from DOE at the very end of December for the first time since August, which was like, oh, at least they're talking to us. And they're saying they're still continuing to review all the projects and programs within DOE. And it seems, based on previous conversations, that's really the gist of the holdup, is until that review is complete. And staff doesn't have a time frame for that. We're just kind of in, at least with respect to the grant, a little bit of hold pattern. But I just want to reiterate to you all that we are continuing to move forward. Fortunately, the deliverables that we owe Department of Energy for the first 3 quarters of this second phase are all engagement sessions. So there are things that we can handle a lot more easily without access to the grant. And that's why I really encourage you, if you're willing to host a presentation on phase 1, please let me know, because those can count towards the engagement that we're expected to do. Future engagement will focus on the actual draft of the code, which MBI is hoping to get out for public review in this first quarter. As you just heard, we're rethinking the roadmap. We're starting, Julie and I and others have figured out like where we want to prioritize, starting on the Living Implementation Guide, so we can get going with that. We'll continue to document the process through the scoping report, continue, all the coordination that's been happening. It may move a little slower. So instead of MBI and I meeting every week, we're meeting every other week to kind of take a little of the burden off of them, because and I want to give a shout out to Greg and Shay and other partners are essentially volunteering their time right now. And it's so greatly appreciated, the commitment from the team to kind of keeping this going. So we're trying to balance being as communicative as possible with not asking too much of partners that should be getting paid and are not currently. And that's why I want to encourage you, if you're not doing one-on-ones with us, maybe doing them as a way to kind of enable us to kind of keep you in the loop, but also facilitate exchange of information from you guys back to us. I've found those to be really helpful. That's how I know where Flagstaff is on their, IECC adoption and knowing about the electrification, the energy efficiency and electrification study. Those have been really helpful ways to kind of keep up with the important work that the jurisdictions are doing that really connect to what we're trying to do as well. And so we can leverage that work and also bring additional attention to the great work that's coming in. Do keep logging your in-kind match for those of you who've made commitments. As I mentioned earlier, I'll get on an email to request that for those of you for the last quarter, which is October through December. And also, as Julia said, hopefully very soon, once we hear from the web designer, we will have like all of this stuff that we have been compiling and producing over, the last 2 years of work on this project. I've logged pretty much everything I could find across, because all the partners have different ways of storing stuff, and it's literally over 300 files. So there's a lot of stuff there. But we're working on trying to figure out how to get it organized and what's going to be publicly available, what will be available just for steering committee members. And so, hopefully this will be a better way for you guys to kind of follow what's going on and see the work of the collaborative. So, again, this is a little repeat of what I've said earlier and what I said in November, but I really, really just want to reiterate that we're not letting the lack of access to the grant stop us. So, gonna keep moving. And again, shout out to the partners, the technical partners that are doing this right now on their own time. So that's all I have, unless do any of the technical partners. I see Brianne, you've got your hand raised. I want to give the floor to any of the partners if they have anything they want to say as well. Brianne?
Sorry, somewhat of a question, but or opportunity potentially. Just wanted to throw out there that in case this is the type of engagement you are potentially looking for, and I know you mentioned you're presenting to the Western Adaptation Alliance coming up, but if you wanted to do some sort of presentation to the wider USDN network, just feel free to reach out whenever. We are going to be continuing with a bunch of learning groups that are relevant to this topic. I know in particular, our resilience learning group is interested in the built environment piece of resilience. So just keep, whenever that might be of interest, let me know.
Okay. Certainly will do. Yeah, we're happy to share what we're doing, and the conversation with the Pacific Coast Collaborative was really well received. So clearly the people appreciate hearing about what we're doing as a group here. Any of the other partners? Jonathan, I saw you were on the call. Hey, Christy, anyone want to share thoughts before we let everybody go? Martine, I think you're all right. Everybody's going to be quiet.
I will share one thing if there's a little bit of time.
Oh, yes.
Our institute is hosting a conference in May called Comfort at the Extremes, Safe and Secure. And one of the conference themes is policy and governance. One of the intentions of that conference was to get people who usually attend this conference, it has a long-standing international pull, to come to the US. It's the first time the conference is going to be held in the US, and to understand some of the challenges that we're facing here that will soon be familiar in other places in the world. So I know that everyone's overtaxed right now and busy doing things, and unfortunately not getting compensated. But if that conference would be a helpful platform for you in any way, I'm very open to ideas for collaboration, or just providing others opportunity to present or engage. So please reach out to me if that is of interest, or if you hear of others who might be interested.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Sure.
Anything else? All right. If nothing more, then I'd say we'll give you a little bit more of your day back and close this out early. Appreciate everyone showing up here. Appreciate all of the participation, and look for those emails that'll be coming out tomorrow and through next week.
Thank you, Leslie.
All right.
Thanks,
Take care,
Leslie.
everyone.
Bye-bye.